I forget the name of the poem.
All right, Father,
Yes, ma'am.
we are live.
Hi, welcome back. Glad we're together again, and we can pursue where some of the things we're doing. I'd like to begin by answering questions and developing some responses to them. And if you'd like me to change that, just let me know. So, one of the things, a couple of people have asked at different times in the last few weeks, was about the languages of the Bible. What language was the Bible written in? And how did we get an English Bible, and so on. So we'll talk a little bit about the languages of the Bible first, and maybe a little bit about the composition of the Bible, either today or next time. I'm being signaled. I didn't wear my coat, so scusami. Is that all right?
Perfect.
Parfait. So we'll do that. First of all, I'm sure, that the Old Testament, what we call the Old Testament, is the testament of the Jews. It's the testament of the Father, and the testament of the Jews. It's the Bible given to us from Judaism, and because Jesus, of course, was Jewish, the church in its inception was Jewish, and because it came from, brought all of Judaism with it and developed from there. It really began to develop that's what the Acts of the Apostles is about, the development of the infant church. So the Old Testament is written in what language? Yes, you're right, Hebrew. The Old Testament is primarily Hebrew. It had filtration in little parts here and there from other languages, but they were later. But basically, the Old Testament, as we know it, comes through Hebrew. Okay, then the New Testament is primarily written in what language?
Greek.
You're right.
Ooh, that was a guess.
You guessed right. Yeah. It's Greek. Why was it written in Greek? Porque Greek. Greco.
Greco.
Porque Greco.
Who was in charge at the time?
That's it. The Roman Empire was Greek. It wasn't Latin.
Mm-hmm.
The Roman Empire was Greek because the Roman Empire embraced the Greek ideal, and therefore everything Greek came to the forefront. So Greek was the language of the Roman Empire at the time of Christ. If you watch the Passion of the Christ, Mel Gibson's film, you'll see them speaking various languages. There's a whole lot of Greek in what's being spoken. There's a little bit of Latin, and that's just right, because there was a little bit of Latin in the early days of the Roman Empire. Well, Greek was the language of the New Testament, and it developed. It was handed on then. The earliest Christian Bible then consisted of an Old Testament in Hebrew and a New Testament in Greek. Okay, that's how it appeared. The people were multilingual in those days, as they are in some parts of the world today. Okay, so I said that, so because it was Greek, it had a hard time filtering into Latin. However, the language of the Roman Empire, of the people, began to become Latin. See, the language grows and develops when it's used by people. The people used the language. They began to use more and more Latin than Greek. You see, so the earliest celebrations then in the first century of the liturgy, the earliest celebrations were not only in Greek but now Latin, and that was filtering in. So there was a need for Latin texts. Why? Because you had this poor Latin coming into the church, the infant church. It's street Latin, we call it now, and street Latin was no disregard for the form of language, for the various forms of the Latin language in the Latin language, and for the various rules. They were just disregarded, and that's evident too in the Passion of the Christ. You can hear them speaking street Latin. It's marvelous. They did some research to get that film accurate, I'll tell you. All right, it began to filter into Latin. The Latin was poor, and they had poor Latin being used at liturgy. Pope, I think his name was Decius, one of the early popes, Decius, I believe, had a private secretary whose name was Jerome. And Jerome was a linguist. He loved language. And Jerome was good for the Pope to have a multilingual secretary, because he could respond in various languages to people around the world who were asking questions. Well, so Decius asked his secretary Jerome to put a rendition of the New Testament from Greek now into Latin, give a New Testament in Latin. Well, Jerome was glad to do that, except he went way beyond the call of duty. He translated the whole thing into Latin. Okay. He needed time off. He got a cave and stayed in the cave where he translated. It was in his cave. It's not up in the mountains. You see pictures of the mountain cave. It's underground. It's an underground cave, and right now there's a street running over it in Bethlehem. It's in Bethlehem, but under the street is Jerome's cave. You can go down into it. And there's just very little light, but anyway, there Jerome stayed and worked, translating not only from the Greek and not only from the Hebrew, but from the Aramaic languages as well. So he used Aramaic and Hebrew and Greek and all these. He was a linguist. He could figure out Latin. He could figure out language very well. So the Latin version then came through Saint Jerome. He was the one that gave it. It became known as the Latin Vulgate. The language is called vulgar when it is of the people. It doesn't mean it's nasty language. The vulgar language is the language of the people. And so it became the Latin Vulgate, because that was the language of the people now. It shifted in the Roman Empire. The language shifted from Greek to Latin. And that's why they needed the Latin translation. And Jerome was the one that gave it. He did the whole thing, and took him, I don't know, 5 years or something to do the whole thing. Underground, in his cave, holed up. And from various languages. There's interesting. He had to make many judgment calls as to the meaning of words and how to translate them best into Latin. See, how do things translate? What is it? In the Lord's Prayer, Pater Noster, qui es in celis, sanctificetur nomen tuum, adveniat regnum tuum, fiat voluntas tua sicut in cielo and da nobis hodie, give us this day, our daily bread. Give us this day. The word that he translated for daily was quotidianum, or quotidian. And he translated it as daily. He made the judgment call that give us this day our quotidian bread, see, our daily bread. Whereas it really, Jerome, that was his call. He had to run things by people who were greater than he, better known theologians. And one of them, of course, was Augustine. And he ran this by Augustine, who disagreed that this was not the best translation. Daily was not the best translation. The best translation was something like I think he wanted to, or he said in Latin, it was not daily, but suprasubstantial. That's Augustine, see? Suprasubstantial, beyond the substance. See, going beyond the suprasubstantial bread. See? Yeah. Even the sound of it. he won. Yeah. So, but the 19 letters between the two about the translation of this one word. Well, I got fascinated by that one time, and I couldn't find any in the letters, and I knew the librarian for St. Leo was, and I knew him personally as well as professionally, and he got into the Vatican Library and found the letters for me.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and get me copies, and I was fascinated to see the translation. I thought one day, I said, if I ever have time, I'd make a great book, you know.
Yes.
I'd sell 2 copies. If my mother were living, I'd sell 3. Come on, baby. Come on. Yeah. You have anything to say? You want to tell the people anything? Okay. Oh, yeah, you do. Well, thank you. Thank you for your input.
Did she raise her hand?
That's all I gotta say about that.
She doesn't need to. Okay, so you see how then it came into the Bible. The whole Bible came into Latin through Jerome, and it became known as the Latin Vulgate because it's still the official Bible of the Church. The Latin language is. Do you know that in the Catholic Church the official language of the Church is Latin? Yeah.
So who made that translation to English? When did that one? From the Latin for us in America.
Oh, it started in England, of course, and then it went worldwide. Now you have all kinds of translations. American Bible Society is the biggest one now for the the English language in America. The ABS, American Bible Society. That's the new American Bible.
What caused the last change that we had when we changed some of the wording, like when consubstantiation came on board?
Yeah. Well, it's not biblical. It's theological issues that were raised at the Vatican, and some cardinals who have nothing else to do.
Just made us learn a new way to say it.
Excuse me, Lord. The Cardinals had
Yeah, consubstantial, big word.
Consubstantial with the Father.
yeah, that's right. See, and what happens is when you theology, you can't do theology without philosophy. So you use the philosophical terms, and so consubstantial is a philosophical term from Thomas. So that's Thomistic. So it comes down into common use, but it's really a theological term.
They're supercalifragilistic.
No, that's a Hollywood term.
Okay,
Okay.
that'll work.
No, we're-
Okay. So that's how you get into the English. I mean, the Latin Vulgate is how it comes through Jerome. Any questions? Okay.
No questions online either.
Okay. Well, we'll send them in.
Yes, you could email them to the church
They send them to me.
or Father.
Okay.
What is Father's email address?
I don't even know.
I can want me to put it in here?
Okay.
Okay.
Kim is putting in my email address if you want to email me and don't know the address. I'll probably get it.
Probably.
Yeah.
Did you need to give it to me?
Now, one of the issues in the Bible, however, is certain books that are not included in the Old Testament of the Latin Bible, and they're Tobit, Judith. Well, Judith is there. I'll take the Tobit, Wisdom. No, these are in. I'm sorry, Tobit, Judith, Wisdom, Sirach.
You're saying they are listed.
These are in the Catholic Bible. They're not in other Bibles. Baruch. Tobit, Judith, Wisdom, Sirach, Baruch. 1 and 2 Maccabees.
Is there a reason for that?
Yeah, well, wait a minute.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry.
No, don't be.
Be patient, lady.
I got a whole lot of patience now.
Yeah. Tobit, Judith, Wisdom, Sirach, Baruch, 1 and 2 Maccabees. And then parts of Esther. And Daniel. These are in the Catholic Bible. They're in the Latin Vulgate. They're excluded from other versions of the Bible used by most Protestant churches, and the reason for their the question about them, are they valid or are they not valid, is goes back to the fact that they are found in the Greek Old Testament. Just as the whole Old Testament was in Hebrew, it also developed in Greek. You had the Greek version of it very early.
Mm-hmm.
So you had the Hebrew and the Greek. The Greek contained these books. The Hebrew did not. Yeah.
The Hebrew didn't, but the Greek did.
Yes. Yeah. So they're included in the Greek, but not the Hebrew. When Jerome translated the Bible into Latin, he put them in. He got them out of Greek because he did it from Greek and Latin and Aramaic and the allied languages. So they were there, he put them in. Though they were part of the Latin Bible then until Martin Luther. Luther challenged these books and took them out.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so he removed them, and so you had then two versions of the Bible, the version with these books, and the version without them. They're called. There's a name for these books. I'm trying to think of it.
Apocrypha?
Yeah, thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, Apocrypha. Crypha.
Good for you, Kim.
Yeah.
Convert learned a little something.
Yeah, and sometimes you can pick up on those things.
I thought maybe you learned it when you were 10. These are the Apocrypha. It's the word, it's a derogatory word. It means false or fake, see?
Mm-hmm.
And that's the word given by Luther. See, these are apocryphal. They're not genuine. They're apocryphal. They're false. So, but the Catholic Church has always maintained these are
Legitimate.
legitimate works. It doesn't matter if they came from Greek or Latin or Hebrew. See, they're still legitimate. Okay. I think that addresses some of the questions that I got. Most of them, I think, are languages of the Bible, Old Testament, and Apocrypha. Yeah. Okay, so let's turn to the Gospel of Mark now. I think we're just beginning the 7th chapter, is where I believe we left off. And we have about 10 minutes.
You got time?
Yeah. Well, we don't have to labor many points. Okay, 10. Ooh,
Careful.
fell down into my chair. Yeah, I was saying the beginning of the 7th chapter. The traditions of the Pharisees is how it begins, and they're challenging Jesus. Why don't you do what these what we do as good Jews? See, why don't we wash all the stuff when we come from the market? The Pharisees and the Jews in general follow the traditions, and such as washing cups and bronze dishes, and your people are slobs. They're not doing that. They're not keeping the traditions. The traditions are the rabbinical traditions, the Pharisaical or rabbinical traditions. These are not scriptural. These traditions come from practice, from being imposed by the rabbis, and they're also known as precepts of the law. They're not the law itself, but these are the precepts of the law. Precept meaning teachings. See, the precepts of the law are these washing cups and dishes and so on, washing their hands up to the elbow and so on. Reminds me of
We're almost doing that now.
reminds me of my years as a chaplain in the hospital. Yeah. Anyway, but that's not in the law. See, this is the precepts of the law. They're observed as if they were law, but they're the precepts of the law. The Pharisaical traditions. I was driving one morning, early morning, with my mother down the Jersey Turnpike, and we pulled into a rest stop at sunrise, and there was a car and the people from the car went to the back, opened the trunk, pulled out jugs of water, and began washing. Washing with the jugs of water, and my mother said, "What are they doing?" I said, "They're Jews. They're following the precepts of the law. See, they had to wash at sunrise, and again at sunset. Even if they didn't wash during the day, those were required by the precepts, the teachings of the Pharisees. And so it was interesting though to see it happening live. See. Why do your disciples not respect the traditions of the Pharisees? Who asked them this? You see, this is asked by chapter 7, verse 1. The Pharisees and scribes had come from Jerusalem, gathered around him. These are the people that are trying to evaluate him. These are the high-powered ones. This is like calling in, I don't know who we'd call in nowadays. This is calling in the Mayo Clinic or whatever to make a medical evaluation. You see, these are the chiefs, and so they called on them to come down from Jerusalem, see, to see what's going on with this man and to evaluate him. So they asked him, well, why don't you follow the precepts of the law? See? And he quotes Isaiah to them. This people honors me with lip service, while their hearts are far from me. That's this is a quote from Isaiah. They teach doctrines, but they're only human regulations, and so you put aside the commandments of God to cling to human tradition. Now he's accusing them of he's saying, I wouldn't mind if you clung to human tradition as long as you didn't put aside the teachings of God. But you put aside God's teaching to cling to human tradition. And he cites the practice of Korban, for example. See, anything he uses Korban, and he says, you're ingenious about how you can curse your father and mother, but as long as you support them. See, however, all you have to say, even if you want to get out of supporting them, see, all you have to do is use the principle of Korban that you developed. It's not in the law, but Korban was common practice. Korban means I could dedicate anything to God, and therefore it was unusable. You couldn't take it and use it. So if I want to go to, say I want to go to take a trip to Lourdes this year, and however my mother needs a new roof on her house. I can say this money is Korban. See, it's dedicated to God, so I can't use it for her roof. See? you get around the law by human traditions, is what he's saying. See? Mm-hmm. So that is dedicated to God. Then he's forbidden from that moment on to do anything for his father or mother in the way that would make. See, you see what the point is. Okay. So Mark is taking pains to teach well here, I think. Now, unclean and unclean, in the next little section, he called the people to him and said, listen to me, all of you. So it's a universal call. See, this is all of you, not just one class or anything. Listen to me, all of you, and understand. Nothing that goes into a man from outside can make him unclean. It is the things that come out of the man that make him unclean. If anyone has ears to hear, let him listen to this. This usually means, if he has ears to hear, it means if you have faith to believe it. See, then you can hear it. Yeah. So. Good coffee, by the way.
Oh, thank you.
While he had gone back in the house, away from the crowd, his disciples questioned him about the parable. And he said to them, do you not understand? Can you not see that whatever goes into a man from outside cannot make him unclean? What is he talking about here? The dietary laws. You see,
Mm-hmm.
he's taking the dietary laws down. You can't be made unclean by your diet.
Okay.
See, whereas
Washing the food,
Where-
everything else, and that'll make the difference.
yeah, what was permitted to eat, not what permitted to eat, great, and
Very strict.
yeah. So you see, the what he's saying here is none of that matters. That's not what makes you clean. Thus he pronounced all foods clean, and went on, it is what comes out of a man that makes him unclean. For it is from within, from the heart, that evil intentions emerge: fornication, theft, murder, adultery, avarice, malice, deceit, indecency. Some of these lists come from the philosophers of the day. But they're all Christianized. All these evil things come from within and make a man unclean.
Gotcha.
Okay. Well, the next section of the gospel, in this next section, Jesus leaves Galilee and goes outside of Galilee. He's a Galilean. I'm a great cartographer.
But note back from Juana. Oh, I understand, she says.
Okay.
I'm a great cartographer. And this is
Oh, she gotta do the work. Oh no.
is my famous map of the Holy Land.
It is a wonderful map.
Thank you. And then the top portion is Galilee. And the Sea of Galilee is in there. Yeah. Yeah. And then the bottom is Jordan, or no, not Jordan. Let's just call it south for now, because the mind falters. You know, so from Galilee, Jesus would have, where he's a Galilean, Nazarene, which is up here somewhere, and but this is where he stayed and preached and all up till this point in Mark's gospel. Now he leaves Galilee for the first time. Okay, and he's going to, in other words, his message himself, Christianity, is beginning to spread out.
Spread further.
Okay, and that's where this is what begins the next section of the Gospel of Mark. Is that now he's going outside Galilee, and he's going to meet a lot more people, non-Jewish people. See? He's going to meet people of various backgrounds. And the first one he'll meet is a Syrophoenician woman, a Gentile, and have a okay.
Okay.
Yep, I think, isn't it time?
Yep.
Okay,
Thank
so
you
we'll
for
pick up.
joining us.
We'll pick up there next time. Thank you for being here. God bless. See you next time.